When he opened the lid of the old wooden box, the scent of dusty paper and faded ink hit Elias Thornfield's nose. It had been 3 weeks since he'd moved into this old house, inherited after his mother's passing, and the attic still held many secrets to be discovered. The 42-year-old history professor shone his flashlight on the photographs inside the box, and the silent witnesses of the past came to life before his eyes. The photo on top was taken when he was 7. In the colorful but faded image, he was standing in front of the old wooden house on the outskirts of Kiruna, the small town in Norrbotten. And next to him was the boy who would change his life forever, Caspian Aldridge. Even his name was magical. Elias hadn't understood it back then, of course. Caspian was just an 8-year-old boy. With his bright green eyes, skin as white as snow, and hair that was almost platinum blonde, he looked as if he had come from another world. In the photo, they were both smiling, their arms around each other's shoulders, as if nothing in the photo world could ever break their friendship. Elias examined the photo more closely. He noticed something strange while his own face was clearly visible in its childish form. There was a slight blur over Caspian's. It was as if he had been in motion or the camera had shaken at that exact moment. He had never noticed this detail before, but there was something else that was even stranger. Elias looked at his own face, of course. There were big differences between his 7-year-old self and his current self. His hair had turned from brown to gray, and the lines of age had appeared on his face. But Caspian, Elias could still see the same boyish expression on his face, as if time had left no mark on him at all. Nonsense, he muttered to himself. It's just a child's face. Of course it looks like it hasn't changed. But the unease within him was growing. Because Caspian Aldridge had disappeared one summer day 25 years ago and was never seen again. Elias set the photo aside and looked at the other items in the box. His mother had never shown him this box. Perhaps she had forgotten, or perhaps she had chosen to forget. It mostly contained items from that summer, the end of 1998, one of the happiest times of Elias's life. Back then, his father, the academic Dr. Magnus Thornfield, was working at the Geological Institute in Kiruna. Elias's mother, Elena, worked at the local library and researched Old Norse legends in her spare time. A perfect family picture until that summer. Caspian's family had come to their summer house. Like the Thornfields, they had come from the city, but Elias had never quite understood where they came from. He didn't know much about Caspian's father, Alaric Aldridge. He was a tall, quiet man who always wore dark suits. His mother, Serafina, was as mysterious as her husband, but much more charming. She was a woman with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a constant faint smile. But Elias remembered Caspian the most. Despite being only 8, he spoke much more maturely than Elias. He loved books, especially old stories. Sometimes he knew things that left Elias astonished. "Did you know," Caspian had said one day, with a slight accent in his English, "that these lands were used by different people a long time ago? They didn't experience time like we do." "What do you mean?" Elias had asked. For them, time was like a circle. The end means the beginning means the end. Elias, who hadn't understood these words back then, could now, as a history professor, grasp their profound meaning. But how could a 7-year-old boy know such things? The next item Elias took from the box was a small leather wallet. Inside were a few more photos from that summer. In one, he and Caspian were standing near Kiruna's famous iron mine. In another, they were sitting by the shore of Lake Tornatresk, watching the midnight sun over the water. These photos had the same strangeness, a slight blur on Caspian's face, as if the lens couldn't quite capture him. Yet Elias's image was sharp and clear in every photo. Maybe it was a problem with the old camera, he thought. But the suspicion inside him grew. In the back pocket of the wallet, he found a small folded piece of paper. When he opened it, he was met with a few lines written in a childish hand. "My Friend Elias, if you forget me, I will never forget you. Even as time passes, I will always stay the same. I will find you again." To Elias's heart began to race. He had never seen this note before, or had he seen it and forgotten? Childhood memories could be deceptive sometimes, but how could he forget such an important detail? When he examined the paper more closely, he noticed that the ink still looked fresh. Could a note written 25 years ago be preserved this well? The paper was aged, but the writing looked as if it had been done yesterday. He shone the flashlight on the photos again. Looking more carefully now, he noticed that the shadows were cast a bit strangely in all the photos with Caspian. While Elias's shadow was clearly visible in every photo, Caspian's was either missing entirely or looked very faint. "Impossible," he whispered. "Shadows don't work like that." His heart was beating even faster now, while his scientific mind tried to justify these anomalies with logical explanations. The primal fear inside him grew. Something had gone wrong that summer, but he couldn't remember what. Elias stood up and looked out the small attic window. The lights of Kiruna twinkled in the distance. This was his home now, but it didn't feel like it. It was as if the shadows of the past still lived here. He thought of his mother, Elena. The woman never spoke of that summer. Whenever Elias asked about Caspian, she would change the subject. "Things in the past should stay in the past," she always said. Now he began to wonder about the reason for his mother's attitude. He took out his phone and went through his old contacts. He had the numbers of a few old neighbors who still lived in Kiruna. Maybe they remembered something about that summer. The first person he called was Astrid Bjornsson. His old neighbor, now an 80-year-old woman, still lived in the same house. "Elias? My goodness, Magnus's son. How are you, my boy?" "I'm fine, Aunt Astrid. I want to ask you something. Do you remember the summer of 1998? There was a family that came to the summer house next to ours then." A long silence came from the other end of the line. "Aunt Astrid, are you still there?" Yes, I'm here." The woman's voice had suddenly become serious. "Why are you asking this, Elias?" "I'm just trying to remember those times. I was very close friends with the family's son, Caspian." "Elias," Astrid's voice was now laced with concern. "You stay away from that business. Some things should be forgotten." "What do you mean? What happened that summer?" "I can't say much, but know this. That family wasn't normal. And then there was Caspian." The line went dead. Elias looked at the phone again. There was a signal, but Astrid wasn't answering. He called again, but it went to busy. The second person he called was Gustav Lindgren. The man who had worked as the postmaster in town back then was now retired. "Uncle Gustav, it's Elias, Magnus Thornfield's son." Of course. How are you, my boy?" "My condolences, by the way. We were very fond of Elena." "Thank you. I want to ask you about the summer of 1998. Do you remember the Aldridge family? Who were our neighbors then?" Gustav's intake of breath was audible over the phone. "Where did you remember that name from?" "I was friends with Caspian that summer. But then they suddenly disappeared. Elias, listen to me. Don't get involved in that family. We were told not to talk about them." "Who told you?" "The police and other people. But most importantly, your father told us." "Magnus asked all of us never to bring it up." "My father? Why?" "I don't know, son. But after the night that family left, you were sick for weeks. You didn't remember anything. The doctor said you had experienced trauma." Elias's world began to shake. Trauma? Being sick? He didn't remember any of it. "Uncle Gustav, please. What happened that night?" "Elias, I really don't know. I just remember there were very strange sounds coming from the summer house that night. And when morning came, they were gone. And you were at home, burning with fever, not remembering anything." Gustav also cut the conversation short. Elias held the phone in his hand, staring in shock. How could he have forgotten something so important? He returned to the photographs. Looking at them now, he felt a different kind of fear. There was something in Caspian's green eyes, in that childish smile. Something his adult mind could now recognize. There was no age in Caspian's eyes. There was a maturity, an ancientness, not seen in any child. Elias examined the photo again. This time he focused on Caspian's clothes. The boy always wore old-fashioned clothing, as if he had come from another era. Back then, he had thought of it as his style, but now he wasn't so sure. His phone rang again. An unknown number. Hello? Is this Elias Thornfield? The voice belonged to an old woman, but he didn't recognize it. Yes, who is this? My name is Inga Eriksson. I live in Kiruna. I heard you were asking around. How did you find out? It's a small town. Everyone knows everyone. You've been asking about the Aldridge family. Elias's pulse quickened. Yes, do you remember them? Of course I remember. But I can't talk on the phone. Come see me tomorrow morning. I live at 47 Tourneau Street. And Elias, yes? Don't bring anything with you, especially not those photographs. The line went dead. Elias stared at the phone in astonishment. How did this woman know about the photographs? And why did she want him not to bring them? He couldn't sleep until late that night. 1,000 questions were spinning in his head. Why had his father, Magnus, forbidden the topic? Why had he suffered trauma? And most importantly, who really was Caspian Aldridge? When morning came, Elias was determined to find the address on Tourneau Street. But he was going to make one more stop first, the town library. Maybe he could find something in the newspaper archives from that. The librarian was a young woman who recognized Elias. Professor Thornfield, welcome. How can I help you? Do you have local newspapers from the summer of 1998? Specifically August. Of course, in the archives. I'll get them for you. The woman returned a few minutes later with a collection of old newspapers. Elias began to flip through the pages. It was mostly routine news, local events, minor accidents, news from the mine. Then he came across a story dated August 23, 1998. Following events last night in the summer house area near Svapavara. A family has been reported missing. Local residents claim to have heard strange noises and seen abnormal lights in the sky around midnight. Police are investigating the incident, but have not yet made a statement. The identity of the missing family has not been disclosed. That was it. No other details. But the date matched. This must have been the night Gustav mentioned. Elias checked the papers for the following days, but there was no other news about the matter. It was as if the event had never happened. He turned to the librarian. Is there any other source about the incident mentioned in this article? The young woman thought. I don't know, but Mr. Nils, the head of archives, might have more information. He's been working here for a long time. Nils was an old man, in his 60s, with thick glasses. Ah, that incident, he said when he heard Elias's question. Yes. I remember. It was a very strange situation. What exactly happened? Nils looked around, and after making sure no one else was there, he moved closer. Officially, nothing happened. But the locals told very strange stories. Green lights in the sky, weird sounds. And that family, it was as if they had never existed. What do you mean, they had no records? No IDs, no passports, nothing. It was like they were ghosts. And the strangest thing was this. Nils paused, hesitating. Please tell me. After that night, no one ever went near that summer house again. The old furniture is still inside, but no one goes in. It's like it's cursed. Elias's hair stood on end. Is that summer house still there? Yes, but my advice is to stay away. That place is not good. Elias was confused when he left the library. Every answer he got created more questions. But one thing was certain now, something very serious had really happened that summer. He said. off for the house on Tornu Street. Talking to Inga Eriksson could perhaps shed light on this whole mystery, or deepen it even further. The house, at number 47, was a small but neat wooden house. When he knocked on the door, an old woman opened it. She was in her 80s, with white hair, but her eyes were very lively. "Eliha Thornfield, come in." The inside of the house was simple but warm. Inga led him to the living room and offered him tea. "I don't know what to tell you," the woman began, "but I'm very old now, and I don't want to take these secrets to the grave." "What secrets?" Inga leaned toward him. "The truth about the Aldridge family, and what really happened to you." Elias held his breath. "That family," Inga said slowly, "they weren't normal. They were not of this world." Her words hung in the air, and a heavy, threatening silence fell over the living room. The childish fear inside Elias had now returned, magnified, and was preparing to envelop him. Inga Eriksson's words echoed in Elias's mind. They were not of this world. After sipping her tea, the old woman fixed her eyes on Elias's and continued to speak. "That summer, your family's arrival was quite an event in town," said Inga. "Your father, Magnus, was known as a very respected geologist. But the Aldridge family was different. No one had ever seen them before. No one knew where they came from." Elias leaned forward. "What did they tell you back then?" "At first, no one thought it was important. Most of the summer house owners came from the city anyway. But that family, their behavior was very strange." Inga stood up and walked to the window. She continued, looking outside. "Alaric Aldridge never stood in the sun. He always stayed in the shadows. His wife, Serafina, was very beautiful, but there was a coldness in her eyes. It was as if she had no soul. And Caspian, what was he like?" Inga's expression changed. A worried look appeared in her eyes. "That child was the strangest of all. He didn't play with the other children. He only spent time with you. And the way he talked, no 8-year-old child talks like that." Memories from that time began to surface in Elias's mind. Caspian was indeed very different. He never wanted toys. He always wanted to read books. And sometimes he knew things that were unbelievable. "One day," said Inga, "Caspian approached old Gunnar in town. The man was 90 years old at the time. Caspian said to him, 'You were a soldier in 1943, and you were wounded in your left arm.' Gunnar was shocked because he had never shared that information with anyone. Elias's hair stood on end. How could he have known? That's the question everyone was asking. But the really strange thing was, the child seemed to know not just the past, but the future as well." "What do you mean?" Inga sat down again and her voice grew even lower. "That summer, little incidents started happening in town. First, Sven Larsson's cow got sick. The next day, Caspian told you, Sven's cow will get better tomorrow, but another of his animals will get sick. And that's exactly what happened." Elias tried to remember this, but he only had blurry images in his mind. Then bigger things started to happen. One day Caspian told you, "There will be a big storm this weekend, but no one will be harmed. Only the old pine tree will fall." The weather was beautiful at the time, with no sign of a storm. And did the storm happen? A terrible storm broke out on Saturday night. And just as he said, only the old pine tree at the entrance to the town fell. There was no other damage. Elias was getting confused. Why didn't he remember such detailed information? "Aunt Inga, why don't I remember these things? What you're telling me doesn't sound familiar at all." The old woman's face grew grim. "Because your memory was erased after that night." "Erased? What do you mean?" Inga stood up and took an old notebook from a cabinet. "This is my diary from that time. I recorded everything." She opened the notebook and found the page dated August 22nd, 1998. "Very strange things are happening tonight. Strange sounds have been coming from the Aldridge's summer house since this evening. Magnus and Elena are very worried. They went to get Elias but haven't returned yet. She turned the page. August 23rd. Magnus came running this morning. They took Elias to the hospital. The boy is in a coma. The doctor says it's traumatic shock. The Aldridge family has disappeared. Nothing is left inside the summer house, as if they never lived there. Elias's heart was pounding. I was in a coma for 3 days. When you woke up, you didn't remember anything. The doctor said the brain erases traumatic memories to protect itself. But what happened that night? Why did I go into a coma? Inga hesitated. This part is difficult to tell you, because I don't know for sure what was real and what was a dream. Please tell me. Inga took a deep breath and continued. That night, around 10 o'clock, green lights began to appear in the sky. At first, we thought it was the northern lights, but it was very different. It was like columns of light descending from above. Elias listened, mesmerized. Then the sounds started. Very strange sounds like music, but not like any kind of music we know. And these sounds were coming from the Aldridge's summer house. What kind of sounds? It's hard to describe. Like melodies coming from very far away, but at the same time, they felt very close. And there was a child's voice. Elias's breath caught. A child's voice. Yes, Caspian's voice, but it was different too. It sounded like the voice of a very old person, but it was a child's voice at the same time. Inga took another page from the notebook. This time there were drawings, amateurish but detailed. I tried to draw what I saw that night. Of course it was very dark and I was terrified, but it's the best I could do. The drawing showed spirals of light hovering over a summer house. And in front of the house, 2 very small figures were drawn. One child-sized, the other adult-sized. When your father Magnus and your mother Elena went to get you, you were standing in front of the summer house. But Caspian wasn't there. He wasn't? No. And you were in a very strange state. Your eyes were open, but it was as if you couldn't. See, you were holding something in your hand. What was it? Inga flipped through the notebook again and took out a small piece of paper. Elias recognized it. It was the same note he had found in the attic. My friend Elias, if you forget me, I will never forget you. Even as time passes, I will always stay the same. I will find you again. You were clutching this note. Elias's hand began to tremble, but I found this note at home. In the attic, Inga's eyes widened. Impossible. That note was taken from your hand at the hospital. Magnus said he burned it. They both looked at each other in silence. A heavy tension hung between them. Aunt Inga, this may sound very strange to you, but do you believe that Caspian didn't age? The old woman thought for a long time. Then she slowly nodded her head. Elias, I have seen many things in my life. These lands are old. Very old. And sometimes the boundaries between the past and the future become blurred. What do you mean? Old Norse legends speak of beings who live outside of time. They call them Alfar, which means elves. But these are not the elves from fairy tale books. They are much more complex beings. Elias's scientific mind rebelled against these words, but the childish fear inside him was growing. These beings feel a closeness to human children, especially pure and kind-hearted children. And sometimes they form a bond with them. What kind of bond? A spiritual bond. But this bond is very dangerous, because those beings don't experience time like we do. For them, the past, present, and future are all the same. Inga stood up and approached the window again. No one can know for sure if Caspian was really human. But I know this, after that night, your life changed. And that bond still exists. What bond? The fact that you continue to search for him. 25 years have passed, but you still think about him. That's not normal, Elias. Elias had to admit that this was true. He had indeed been searching for Caspian his whole life. At university, at work, in every city he went to, He always felt as if a part of him was missing. So what should I do now? Inga turned to him. There was a deep concern in her eyes. Nothing. Try to break that bond. Because if he really is that kind of being, he will find you. And this time, you might not be ready. What do you mean? You were 7 years old then, innocent and unprotected. Now you are an adult, you have a life, you have responsibilities. If he appears again, the outcome could be very different. Inga didn't finish her sentence, but Elias understood. It would be much harder for an adult mind to accept the pure bond of childhood. There's one more thing, said Inga, and went to the cabinet again. This time she took out a small box. These are things that were found around the summer house after that night. When she opened the box, there were strange objects inside. Crystal-like stones, metal fragments, and a very familiar toy car. This car, Elias said breathlessly, is my toy. Yes, but they found it on the roof of the summer house, 10 kilometers from your house. Elias picked up the toy car. It was a red plastic fire truck. It was one of his favorite toys as a child. But he didn't remember how he had taken it there. What else is in the box? Inga took out one of the crystal-like stones. When she placed it in Elias's hand, the stone began to emit a warm light. What is this? Elias asked in amazement. I don't know. But it glows when you touch it. It doesn't do that for anyone else. The stone began to vibrate in Elias's hand. And suddenly, he heard a very clear voice in his mind. Elias, my friend, do you remember me? Elias dropped the stone. The crystal didn't shatter, but its light went out. What happened? Inga asked with concern. I heard a voice. Caspian's voice. Inga's face turned pale. Impossible. That stone has been silent for 25 years. But I heard it very clearly. It said, Elias, my friend, do you remember me? They both stared at the stone. It now looked like a normal piece of crystal, with no special features. Elias, Inga said seriously, it's time for you to go. This business is not good for you, but I need to learn more. I want to know the truth. Some truths are better left unknown. I'll give you one last piece of advice. Do not go to that summer house. Whatever you do, do not go near it. Elias stood up. His mind was a mess, but at the same time, there was something about this that felt more real than anything in his life. Thank you, Aunt Inga. Everything you've told me has been very valuable. Be careful, Elias. And remember, if Caspian thinks you are looking for him, he will find you. Do not look for him. As Elias left Inga's house, evening was beginning to fall. Walking through the streets of Kiruna, he felt that everything looked different. It was as if the real world behind a curtain was now become invisible. His phone rang in his pocket. An unknown number. Hello? Elias? The voice sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. Yes, who is this? You're looking for him, aren't you? Elias's heart began to pound. Who am I speaking with? I'm Henrik Manson. I used to live in Svapavara. I heard you were looking. Do you know anything about the Aldridge family? I do, and I have something important to tell you, but not on the phone. Let's meet tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock at the Old Miners Cafe. Which cafe? The one on Gruvgaten, Sari's Cafe, and Elias. Yes, don't bring anything with you, especially not old items. They send signals to him. The line went dead. As Elias stared at the phone, Inga's words echoed in his mind. If he thinks you are looking for him, he will find you. Was Caspian really looking for him? And if so, was that a good thing or something very bad? That night at home, Elias went up to the attic and looked at the photos again. He was looking at them with different eyes now. He could clearly see the maturity, the ancientness in Caspian's eyes. It was an expression no child should have, and on the back of the photo, there was a small inscription he hadn't noticed before. It was written in a hand that made it clear the native language was not Swedish. Tempus fugit, sed macedia mane. Latin. Time flies, but friendship remains. Elias's hair stood on end. How could an 8-year-old boy know Latin? But the truly terrifying thing was something else. This writing looked much fresher than Elias remembered. It looked as if it had been written yesterday. That night, Caspian was in Elias's dreams. The boy was smiling at him and saying, "We will be together again very soon, my friend. Very soon." When he woke up, his pillow was soaked with sweat. And in his room, he could hear a very faint sound. A familiar melody. It was the old Scandinavian folk song that Caspian had taught him that summer. Early in the morning, Elias stood in front of Sari's cafe on Gruvgaten. The old miner's cafe was a small warm place in the typical Swedish style. Inside, an old man was waiting for him, Henrik Manson. He was in his 60s with a gray beard and a face full of deep lines that carried the fatigue of many long years. "Elias Thornfield," Henrik said, standing up. "I know you. You're Magnus's son. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Manson. What did you want to tell me?" Henrik looked around, and after making sure there were no other customers, he leaned over the table. "I was there that night," he said in a low voice. "August 23rd, 1998. I saw everything." Elias's heart began to race. "What exactly did you see?" Henrik took a deep breath and began. "I was working as a logger in Svappavaara back then. I was on the night watch, checking for poachers. Around 10 o'clock, I noticed a strange light coming from the Aldridge's summer house." "What kind of light?" "It was greenish but not very bright. It was like a light seeping out from within. It piqued my curiosity, and I decided to get closer." Henrik took a sip of his coffee and continued. "When I got near the summer house, I heard music. Very strange music, not like any kind I'd ever heard. And there were voices." "What kind of voices?" "Speaking voices. But not in any language, that is, not in any language I know. And among them was a child's voice." Elias leaned forward. "Caspian's voice?" "Yes, but it was very strange. It was as if it was the voice of both a child and an old man at the same time. It was echoing." Henrik paused and closed his eyes, as if reliving that moment. "What happened next?" "I tried to look through the window of the summer house. Inside, there wasn't a normal living room. What was there? It was like a completely different place. A vast, seemingly infinite space. And in the middle, there were two figures." Elias's breath caught. "Who were they?" "One was Caspian, but at the same time it wasn't. It was like his shadow. Sometimes he looked like a child, sometimes like a very old man. And the other?" Henrik's face tensed. "It was you. But you were different too. Your eyes were open, but it was as if you couldn't see anything. And you had your hands outstretched, as if you were trying to take something." Elias's hand began to tremble on the table. "What was I trying to take?" "I don't know. But Caspian was giving you something. Something small and bright. And every time he gave it, you seemed to age." "Age?" "Yes, as if years were passing. Your hair grew longer, you got taller, your face changed. But then you would become a child again. This cycle repeated several times." As Elias tried to process this information, Henrik continued. "Then suddenly there was a terrible sound. Like a scream, but a much deeper one. And Caspian suddenly changed." "How did he change?" "His face became very old, as if he were thousands of years old, and his eyes were no longer green. They were golden, and they were glowing very brightly." Henrik put his hands on the table, showing that they were trembling. "That's when I understood that Caspian was not human. I didn't know what he was, but he was definitely not human." "What happened then?" "Caspian looked at you one last time. And in that look, there was a very deep sadness, as if he were saying goodbye. Then he stretched his hand toward you, and a bright light came out." "A light?" "Yes, and when that light enveloped you, you fell to the ground. And Caspian, he slowly began to fade. First his feet, then his body, and finally his face. He completely disappeared. Elias stared at Henrik in shock. And the large space inside the summer house? It returned to normal. It became an ordinary living room again. You were lying unconscious on the floor, and you were holding that small, bright object in your hand. Which object? Henrik took something small from his pocket and placed it on the table. Elias recognized it. It was one of the crystal stones he had seen at Inga's house yesterday. Inga had this. Yes, but there are many more. Henrik signaled to the cafe owner. The old man nodded, locked the door, and flipped the sign to closed. Nils, said Henrik, bring it out. The cafe owner, Nils, brought a large chest from the back. Inside were dozens of crystal stones, all of different sizes. These were found around the summer house after that night, said Henrik, and they all react only to your touch. Elias touched one of the stones. It immediately began to glow, and he started to hear voices in his mind. Elias, my friend, did you miss me? He didn't pull away this time. He held the stone in his hand and listened to the voice. Are you real, Caspian? I was always real. You tried to forget me, but I never forgot you. Henrik and Nils were watching in amazement. What are you hearing? Asked Henrik. I'm talking to Caspian. He has found me. The voice continued. Elias, you have been searching for me for 25 years, but I was the one who was truly searching. I have always watched you. You watched me? When you were in college, when you were looking for a job, when you were trying to get married. I was always with you, but you couldn't see me. Elias's blood ran cold. When I was trying to get married, you were going to marry Sarah, but I didn't allow it, because she did not belong to us. Elias put the stone down on the table. Sarah, his fiancée from 3 years ago. She had left him a week before the wedding without an explanation. He had never understood the reason. Mr. Manson, Elias said in a trembling voice, how do these stones work? We don't know, but we know this, they are a part of Caspian. And as long as you touch them, he can communicate with you. Nils interjected. Elias, how long have you been feeling these stones? What do you mean? Have you ever felt strange attractions in your life? To certain places, certain objects? Elias thought. He actually had. He always wanted to touch certain stones in antique shops. He would stand for hours in front of crystal collections in museums. And in every house he moved into, the first thing he would do was search the attic or the basement. Yes, I have. That's why, said Henrik. You were looking for them, but you didn't realize it, because every stone carries a message from Caspian. Elias, touch the stone again. Caspian, why did you leave that night? I had to leave. Because you were growing up, and I had to remain a child. Why did you have to remain a child? Because that is my nature. I am outside of time. But my bond with you pulls me into time, and that burns both me and you. It burns us? That night, if I had stayed, you would have become like me. You would have been left outside of time. You would have been cut off from your family, your friends, your normal life. Tears began to well up in Elias's eyes. He was finally beginning to understand. You protected me. Yes, but now you are an adult. You can make your own choice. What choice? Whether you want to come with me. Henrik suddenly stood up. No. You can't offer him such a choice. But the voice continued. Elias, if you come with me, we will be friends forever in our world. You will never grow old, never get sick, never die. And what about here? What about my life? What is your life here? You are lonely, you are unhappy. You repeat the same routine every day. You have never found true happiness. These words hit Elias hard because they were true. His life often felt empty and meaningless. But I am happy being human. Are you really? Then why did you miss me so much? Why have you been searching for 25 years? Elias couldn't answer. Henrik intervened. Elias, don't listen to him. These beings deceive people. They promise you paradise, but in reality, they steal your soul. Is Henrik telling the truth, Caspian? There was a long silence. Then the voice came again, but this time it was sadder. I am just so lonely, Elias. I have been alone for thousands of years, and I have never had a friend like you. Thousands of years? Yes, I have lived in these lands for a very long time, but always alone, until you came. Elias's heart ached. He could feel Caspian's loneliness. Why didn't you have other friends? Because people grow up and change. But you were different. You had a pure heart and accepted me for who I was. I still accept you, but now you are an adult. You have logic. You have doubts. That pure bond is broken. Nils interjected. Elias, you must end this conversation. These stones are dangerous. But Elias wasn't listening. Caspian, can you really see me? Yes, you are in the cafe right now. Henrik and Nils are there too, and you are feeling very conflicted. Where are you? I am everywhere and nowhere. But if you want to see me, I can show myself. Yes, I want to see you. Henrik shouted anxiously. No, Elias, but it was too late. The stone in Elias's hand began to emit a very bright light. And within that light, a silhouette slowly began to appear. Caspian was there, exactly as he was 25 years ago. 8 years old, with blonde hair and green eyes. But in his eyes was that familiar maturity. Hello, Elias, he said with a smile. Did you miss me? Elias stood up. He reached out his hands but couldn't touch Caspian. His hand passed through empty space. You aren't real. I am as real as you want me to be. But to exist fully in your world, I need your help. What kind of help? Caspian's expression turned. Serious. You need to come to the old summer house. There, where our bond began, we can complete it. Henrik slammed his hand on the table. No, don't go to that summer house, Elias. It's a trap. But Caspian turned to him as well. Henrik, you never understood me. I don't want to harm Elias. I love him. That is not what love is, said Henrik. Love is not taking away someone's freedom. Anger flared in Caspian's eyes. What do you know of love? You have been alone your whole life. Henrik's face tensed. It was true Henrik had never married, had always lived alone. That's enough, sighed Elias. Caspian, are you truly my friend or are you something else? Caspian turned to him. There was disappointment in his eyes. I am your best friend. Never doubt that. But I am also not suited to the rules of this world. Are you an elf? Like Inga said, people call us elves, but we call ourselves the Luz Alfar, the children of light. The children of light? Yes, we have existed since the beginning of time, much older than humans. And sometimes we form friendships with you. Nils interjected, but what is the price of your friendship? Caspian's face darkened. Everything has a price. But I am not asking for much from Elias. What do you want? Asked Elias. Just for us to be together again, like before. But it can't be like before. I'm an adult now. You can be a child if you want. In our world, age is a choice. Henrik stood up. This conversation is over. Elias, this being is not telling you the truth. What truth? Caspian asked angrily. The truth is that if you take him, his soul will be lost to our world. He will never be able to return. Caspian was silent for a long time. Then he bowed his head. That is true, but he is unhappy here. I can make him happy. Happiness cannot be forced, said Henrik. Elias listened to them all. He had conflicting feelings in his heart. On one hand, he had missed Caspian terribly. On the other, he knew this situation was very dangerous. Caspian, he said finally, give me some time. This is a very big decision. How much time? I don't No, but please don't push me. Caspian's image slowly began to fade. All right, my friend. But don't make me wait too long. Because loneliness is a very painful thing. And he disappeared. Elias put the stone down on the table and walked out of the cafe. Henrik and Nils ran after him. Elias, where are you going? I need to think. This is very complicated. Don't even think about going to that summer house. But Elias was already walking away. He had only one thought in his mind. He wanted to see the summer house. Perhaps he could learn the truth there. When Elias Thornfield set out for Svappavaara that afternoon, the sky was a leaden color and it had begun to snow. The road from Kiruna to the old summer house area passed through pine forests, and every kilometer brought Elias a little closer to his past. Caspian's words echoed in his mind. You need to come to the old summer house. But first, he had to do something else. He wanted to find the other witnesses Henrik had mentioned. Because the more truth he learned, the better decision he could make. His first stop was the small post office in the center of Svappavaara. The woman working there, Margareta Lindström, had served as a nurse in the town back then. Elias knew her. She was a close friend of his mother, Elena. Elias, Margareta said when she saw him. My goodness, how you've grown. My condolences, by the way. Thank you, Aunt Margareta. I want to ask you something. A worried expression appeared on the woman's face. Is it about the summer of 1998? Yes, you know what happened then, don't you? Margareta looked around and, after making sure there was no one else in the post office, she gestured. Come to the back. When they were in the small office, Margareta closed the door. Elias, do you remember those events? No, I don't remember anything. The doctor said it was traumatic amnesia. It's a good thing you don't. Because what you went through that night, no child should ever have to experience. What did I experience? Margareta hesitated for a long time. Then she opened an old file cabinet and took out a yellowed envelope. These are your medical records from that time. Normally I shouldn't show them to anyone, but you need to know this now. When he opened the envelope, there were aged medical reports inside. Elias read the first page. Patient, Elias Thornfield, age 7. Date, August 24, 1998. Complaint, loss of consciousness, hypothermia, abnormal burn marks on the skin. Burn marks? Elias asked in astonishment. Yes, but they were very strange burns. They weren't caused by any fire or chemical. It was as if they were caused by something very cold. Elias continued to read the report. Physical examination. Patient's body temperature is 34 degrees Celsius. Spiral-shaped burn marks are present on the left hand and right shoulder. These marks do not match any known type of burn. They resemble frostbite from very low temperatures, but their shape is abnormal. Neurological status. Patient is awake but not communicating with his surroundings. Does not respond to questions. Eyes are open but there is no fixation. It is as if he is staring at a very distant place. What does this mean? Asked Elias. For 3 days you were physically there, but spiritually you were somewhere very far away. You didn't speak, you didn't eat. You just stared at that bright stone in your hand. What stone? Margareta took a photograph from the file. In the black and white photo, a young Elias was seen lying in a hospital bed. He was holding a crystal stone in his hand, and his eyes were fixed on the ceiling. This stone, said Margareta, was what brought you back to this world. How? On the 3rd day, the stone suddenly began to glow, and you suddenly woke up and started to cry. But you were only saying one thing. Caspian is gone, Caspian is gone. Elias felt a lump in his throat. He could feel the pain that child had experienced. What happened then? Your father, Magnus, came. He took the stone from your hand and took it far away, and you slowly returned to normal. But without your memory. Where did my father take the stone? I don't know. But I know this, Magnus changed a lot after that night. He always seemed worried and scared. Margareta took another paper from the file. This is a note your father wrote back then. He entrusted it to me. Elias took the paper. It was written in his father's handwriting. Margareta, if Elias ever starts to question these events, tell him this. Some doors should never be opened. Some friendships come at a very high price. We are trying to protect him. Did my father say anything else? Yes, he said this. Caspian will come back. Maybe after many years, but he will come back. And Elias needs to be ready then. Elias's heart began to pound. Ready? Ready for what? I don't know. But your father was very scared. And you were doing very strange things back then. What kind of things? Margareta hesitated. This might upset you, but you would sometimes talk to people who weren't there. And sometimes you would tell the future. The future? Yes, for example, you said that Astrid Björnsson's cat would go missing. 2 days later, the cat really did go missing. Or you said that Carl Eriksson's bicycle would be stolen. The bicycle was stolen within the week. Elias listened in shock. How is that possible? We don't know. But it was as if Caspian's power had remained with you. Of course, this condition passed over time. When did it pass? About a year later. You returned to normal, and these abilities slowly faded away. As Elias closed the file, Margareta touched him. Elias, there's one more thing, but this is very difficult to say. Please tell me. That summer, there were other children here besides you. And strange things happened to all of them. What kind of strange things? Margareta went to the cabinet again and took out another file. This is Lena Carlson's file. She was the same age as you. Elias opened the file. Inside were the medical reports of another child. Patient, Lena Carlson, age 7. Date, August 25, 1998. Complaint, sleep disorders, nightmares, speaking in an unknown language. Lena was affected too? Yes, the night you disappeared, Lena was sleeping at home, but she woke up in the middle of the night and started speaking in a language she didn't know. Her family was terrified. What language? No one could understand it, but it seemed like a very old language, and she was singing songs in that language. Elias continued to read the report. Observation. Patient is singing songs in an unknown language. The melodies resemble very old Scandinavian folk songs, but the lyrics are completely different. The patient is not aware of this condition. How long did this last? A week. Then she returned to her normal state, but Lena doesn't remember those events either. Margareta took out more files. Eric Leinberg, Astrid Holmström, Nils Andersson. All the children who were here that summer were affected. All of them? Yes, each had different symptoms. Eric was constantly drawing pictures of places he had never seen. Astrid claimed to have an imaginary friend. And Nils was the strangest. What did Nils do? He collected stones. He would stay outside for days, collecting strangely shaped stones. And when he arranged these stones in a circle, he would sit in the middle and talk. Who did he talk to? We didn't know, but sometimes answers would come back. Elias's hair stood on end. What kind of answers? The quiet sounds of the wind. But it was as if someone was whispering. And Nils would be very happy when he heard these sounds. Where are these children now? Most of them moved away. Their families were very scared and left the town. Only Lena stayed. She lives in Kiruna now. Can I talk to Lena? Margareta hesitated. Elias, those people are trying to forget. Don't open old wounds. But I want to know the truth. All right, but be very careful. Lena is married now and has 2 children. She's trying to build a normal life. Margareta wrote an address on a piece of paper. This is Lena's address. But remember, she doesn't remember anything, just like you. Elias was very confused when he left the post office. Caspian had formed a bond not just with him, but with all the children. But why? And why were the others affected? His next stop was the old summer house area. He wasn't going to the Aldridge's summer house yet, but he wanted to see the nearby houses. When he arrived in the area, he saw that most of the summer houses were abandoned. Only a few houses looked well maintained. In front of one of them, an old man was busy with gardening. "Excuse me," Elias said, approaching. The man looked up. He was a strongly built man in his 70s. "Yes, I'm Elias Thornfield, the son of Magnus, who had a summer house here in 1998. The man's face changed suddenly. Are you that boy?" "Yes, and who are you?" "Olav Henriksson. I live here year-round." "That night I saw everything." Elias's pulse quickened. "What did?" "You see?" Olav looked around, and after making sure no one else was there, he moved closer. "You really don't remember?" "No, nothing." Olav shook his head. "Perhaps it's for the best. Because that night, we saw things that should not exist in this world." "Will you tell me?" Olav hesitated, then gestured toward his house. "Come inside. This is not a conversation for the outdoors." The inside of his house was simple but warm. Olav brewed some tea, and they moved to the living room. "That night," Olav began, "around 10 o'clock I started to hear strange sounds. It was like music, but very different." "How was it different?" "It sounded like it was coming from very far away. And this music was affecting all of nature. The birds fell silent, the insect noises stopped, even the wind died down." Elias listened intently. Then the lights started. First green, then golden. And these lights were focused on the Aldridge's summer house. "What did you see inside the summer house?" "Well, that's the strange part. The inside of the house looked enormous. It was as if the space was much larger than its normal dimensions." "What do you mean?" "From the outside, it looked like a normal small summer house. But when you looked inside, it appeared to be the hall of a grand palace." Olav stood up and took an old photograph from a drawer. "This is a photo I took that night. It's very blurry, of course, because I was terrified." The photograph indeed showed the summer house looking incredibly large. And inside, there were two small figures. "You and Caspian," said Olav, "but in a very strange state." "How so?" "You were standing, but your eyes were closed. And Caspian was constantly changing." "Changing?" "Yes. Sometimes he looked like a child, sometimes a very old man. Sometimes a boy, sometimes a girl. It was as if he had no fixed form." Elias examined the photograph closely. It was true that the blurry figures seemed to be in constant motion. "What happened then?" A terrible scream was heard. "And the summer house suddenly returned to normal. You fell to the ground, and Caspian just vanished." "Vanished?" "Yes, as if he had never been there. And from that moment on, the entire summer house area changed." "How did it change?" Olav walked to the window and pointed outside. "Look, can you see the Aldridge's summer house?" Elias looked. In the distance, among the other summer houses, there was one that looked different. It appeared darker and colder than the others. "Yes, I see it. That house no longer experiences any seasons. The trees around it don't blossom in spring or shed their leaves in autumn. It's as if time has stopped there." Elias looked carefully. What Olav said was true. The nature around the house looked different. "And sometimes," Olav continued, "sounds come from that house at midnight." "What kind of sounds?" "A child's voice. A child's voice calling out. And that voice is calling your name." Elias's blood ran cold. "My name?" "Yes, it calls, Elias, Elias, every night at exactly 12 o'clock. "How long has this been happening?" "For 25 years. Every single night." Elias moved closer to the window. He felt a strange pull as he looked at the summer house. "Mr. Olav, have you ever thought of going to that house?" "I went once. The first year. I couldn't overcome my curiosity." What did you find? Olav's face tensed. I couldn't get inside. When I approached the door, it became very cold. And I heard voices from within. What kind of voices? Conversations. As if there were people inside, but no one lives there. What were they talking about? I couldn't understand. It was in a language I've never heard. But there was a child's voice among them. Elias couldn't take it anymore. I have to go to that house. No, Olav said sharply. Don't go to that house. It's too dangerous. Why? Because if you go there, you might not be able to come back. What do you mean? Olav hesitated for a long time. Then he spoke in a very low voice. Last year a boy came. Here is a tourist, 9 years old, with blonde hair. He looked a lot like you. What happened to him? He became curious about the house and went near it. When his family looked for him in the morning, they found him sitting in front of the house. Is that a bad thing? The boy was no longer speaking, and in his eyes, there was no sign of life. It was as if his soul was no longer in his body. Elias's throat went dry. Where is that boy now? In the hospital. Still in the same condition. The doctors can't do anything. And you think this has to do with Caspian? I'm sure of it. That being is still there, and it's looking for children like you. Elias looked out the window at the summer house again. This time he noticed something different. A faint light was flickering in one of the windows. Mr. Olav, there's a light over there. Olav looked too, and his face turned pale. No, that's impossible. There's no electricity in that house, but the light was real. And it seemed to be waving at Elias. At that moment, his phone rang in his pocket, an unknown number. Hello? Elias, my friend. It was Caspian's voice. Caspian, you've come. You've come to see me. Am I seeing you? In the window. Are you looking at me? Elias looked at the summer house. The light was brighter now. Yes, I see it. Then come to me. I have waited so long. The line went dead. Olav grabbed Elias's arm. Don't go, it's a trap. But Elias had already lost control. He started walking toward the house. Elias, stop. But it was too late. Elias was already on his way to the summer house. And this time, he was going to face the truth. As Elias walked towards the summer house, he could hear Olav's voice behind him. Don't go, it's too dangerous. But it was as if he were under a spell. With every step, he got closer to the house, and the pull inside him grew stronger. Just as he reached the garden gate of the summer house, his cell phone rang again. This time it was a familiar number. It was Henrik. Elias. Where are you? I'm at the summer house. Which summer house? The Aldridges? No, get away from there right now. Henrik, you know about this place too? Of course I do. And I have something very important to tell you. Leave there immediately and come to me. Elias looked at the summer house one more time. The light in the window was still shining, but it now seemed more erratic. Where should I come? To Karuna Elementary School. I'm waiting for you in the archive room. And Elias, don't bring any crystal stones with you. The line went dead. Elias looked at the summer house one last time. A voice inside him was telling him to go in, but the urgency in Henrik's voice stopped him. He turned back and ran towards his car. Olav was still in his garden and looked relieved. You made the right decision, he called out. Never go to that house alone. Karuna Elementary School was where Elias had studied as a child. Entering the old stone building took him back years. Henrik was waiting for him in the archive room in the basement. Henrik, what's the rush? Because I've discovered something very serious. I was looking through the school records. Henrik pointed to the table in front of him. On it were old school files from the late 1990s. Look at this, he said, showing the class list for the 1998-1999 school year. Elias examined the list. He found his own name in Class 2A, but another name caught his attention. This is impossible. he whispered. The list clearly stated Caspian Aldridge, 2B. Yes, said Henrik. Caspian was registered at this school that year, as your peer. But that can't be. He was 8, I was 7. We shouldn't have been in the same grade. Henrik opened another file. Look, it gets even stranger. This is Caspian's student file. When he opened the file, Elias was shocked. Inside was Caspian's school photo, exactly as he remembered, with blonde hair and green eyes. But the other information in the file was very strange. Student name, Caspian Aldridge, date of birth, June 23, 1990. Guardian, Alaric Aldridge. Previous school, no record. Address, Svapavara, Summer House area. Temporary, date of birth 1990. Sighed Elias. That makes him 1 year older than me. But he always acted younger. Read on. Elias continued to flip through the file. Caspian's grades were perfect. He was getting A's in all subjects. But the teacher's comments were written very strangely. Math teacher, Mrs. Erickson. Caspian knows subjects at a level we haven't taught. Sometimes he solves high school level math problems. When I ask him where he learned it, he says, I remember. History teacher, Mr. Lindgren. This child knows Scandinavian history in much more detail than the textbooks. Sometimes he talks about events that are not in any sources. Very strange. Class teacher, Mrs. Holmstrom. Caspian is a very mature child, but he doesn't socialize much with the other students. He is only friends with Elias Thornfield. The two of them play very strange games together. What strange games? Asked Elias. Henrik turned the page. This is also interesting. Mrs. Holmstrom has detailed observations. October 15th, 1998. Caspian and Elias are playing a game they call the time game. During recess, Caspian tells Elias things that will happen in the future, and Elias writes them down. This game is disturbing the other children because what he says really happens. What kind of things were really happening? Henrik showed another page. October 22nd, 1998. Caspian said there would be an accident at school tomorrow. The next day, the radiator really did burst. It could be a coincidence, but the children are scared. November 5th, 1998. The day Caspian said our teacher would get sick, I really did get sick. This is happening too often to be a coincidence anymore. Elias's hands were trembling as he closed the file. Henrik, I don't remember this. Of course you don't. But that's not the strangest part. Henrik took out another file. This is Caspian's attendance record. The record was very strange. Caspian came to school very irregularly. Sometimes he wouldn't come for a week, then he would suddenly appear. And look at these dates, said Henrik. The last day Caspian came. Elias looked at the date, August 20th, 1998. 3 days before that night. He never came after that. No. And the strangest thing is this, the teachers marked him as unregistered, as if he had never studied at this school. Henrik showed more records. Look, Caspian's name is not in the 1999 records. It's been erased as if he never existed. How is that possible? I don't know, but there's something else. Henrik opened his computer and showed old school photos. There were class photos from 1998. This is class 2A, your class. In the photo, a young Elias was seen, along with the other students. Now this is class 2B, Caspian's class. There were children in this photo too, but Caspian was not there. Where is he? That's the very strange question. Henrik took out old logbooks from the archive. These are the diaries of Mr. Lundberg, the principal at the time. He opened to the date August 23rd, 1998. We had a very strange situation. We had a student named Caspian Aldridge, but no teacher remembers him. There are records in his files, there are photos, but no one remembers teaching him. It's as if he only existed on paper. That's impossible, said Elias. Read on. I asked Elias Thornfield. He remembers Caspian very well and says he was his best friend. But no other child remembers him. Very strange. Henrik turned the page. I called his family. There's no one named the Aldridge family. The address they gave is a vacant lot. Their phone numbers don't work. Where did this child come from? Elias stood up and began to pace the room. Henrik, what does this mean? I think Caspian never really studied at this school, but somehow he created records. And only you could see him, but the teacher's comments are real. Yes, they are real. But the teachers forgot after they wrote those comments, as if it was erased from their memories. Henrik opened other files on his computer. And look at this. This is much more frightening. There was another document on the screen. These are Caspian Aldridge's school records. But not just from 1998. Elias looked closer at the screen. The document read, 1987-1988 Lulu Elementary School. Caspian Aldridge, age 7. 1976-1977. Sundsville Elementary School. Caspian Aldridge, age 7. 1965 to 1966. Yumi Elementary School. Caspian Aldridge, age 7. 1954-1955. Stersund Elementary School. Caspian Aldridge, age 7. The list went even further back. Henrik, what does this mean? Caspian has been enrolling in different schools for decades at the same age. Each time he befriends a different child. Elias's knees began to tremble. What happened to those children? Henrik changed the screen. This is the truly terrifying part. The new document had other names. 1987, Lars Hedström, age 7, Luleå, missing. 1976, Ingrid Carlson, age 7, Sundsvall, missing. 1965, Johan Persson, age 7, Yumi, missing. They're all missing? Yes. And the last place they were all seen was with Caspian. Elias sank into the chair. Then I too ... You were lucky. Somehow you were saved. But the others? Henrik opened another file. Inside were old newspaper clippings. 7-year-old Lars missing in Lulu, 1987. Lars Hedström disappeared while going to play with someone he called his invisible friend. According to his family, the boy had been acting very strangely in recent days and was talking to a child who wasn't there. Mysterious disappearance in Sundsvall, 1976. Ingrid Carlson left home saying she was going to play with her friend Caspian and was never seen again. However, no child named Caspian could be found. So, Elias said slowly, Caspian has been doing this for thousands of years. Yes, he is truly immortal. And every 10 to 12 years, he looks for a new child to befriend. Elias stood up. Why was I able to escape? I don't know. But maybe, just maybe, someone in your family stopped him. Henrik took out another box from the archive. These are your father's private files. Do you really know Magnus? Of course, I know him. He's my father. But this is about Magnus Thornfield's identity. When he opened the file, Elias was shocked. Inside were very old photos of his father. But these photos were not from just a few years ago. There was a photo from 1987. His father looked exactly the same as he did now. He hadn't aged at all. This is impossible. Henrik showed more photos. 1976, 1965, 1954. In each one, Magnus Thornfield was the same age. Your father is not a normal human being either, Elias. What do you mean? Magnus is the only one who can stop Caspian. Because he is the same kind of being. Elias was completely confused now. My father isn't human. I don't know what he is. But he prevents Caspian from taking the children. A kind of protector. Henrik took out one last file. And this is the most important document. Inside was a text written in ancient Norse runes. What is this? This is the ancient pact between the Lusulfur and the Dekalfur. Isn't Lusulfur Caspian's kind? Yes, the Light Elves. But there are also the Dackelfur, the dark elves. Henrik began to translate the text. The children of light cannot take human offspring by fear or force. They can only take children who come willingly. The children of dark, however, are obligated to protect the human offspring. Is my father a dark elf? It's possible. According to this pact, Magnus's duty is to stop Caspian. As Elias tried to process all this information, Henrik's phone rang. Hello? Who? Astrid? Henrik's face tensed. When? Just now? He hung up the phone and turned to Elias. Astrid Björnsson called. Caspian is in front of your house. What? Yes, and he's waiting for you. He says, tell Elias the time has come. Elias jumped to his feet. I have to go to my house. No, it's too dangerous. But he's waiting for me. Elias, you know the truth now. Caspian wants to take you. And if you go, you will disappear like the others. So what should I do? Henrik thought. First, we need to find your father. Only he can stop Caspian. My father is dead, Henrik. Is he really? According to these photos, he's immortal. Elias looked at Henrik in astonishment. Had his father really died, or had he just disappeared? Henrik, I want to see my father's grave. Now? Yes. If he is truly immortal, his grave might be empty. Henrik nodded. All right. But first, let's call Astrid and find out the situation. When? They called Astrid. The woman was very agitated. Caspian is here. He's standing in front of your house. And he looks very different. How different? Sometimes he looks like a child, sometimes an adult. He's constantly changing. And there are strange lights around him. Is there anyone else? No, he's alone. But he's standing very calmly, as if he's waiting for something. The line went dead. Henrik looked at Elias. The decision is yours. But know this, if you go to him, you might not be able to come back this time. Elias took a deep breath. He knew the truth now. Caspian wanted to take him, and his father was some kind of being who protected him. Henrik, take me to the cemetery. I need to learn the truth about my father. All right. But if the grave is empty, what will we do? Then we will find him and make him face Caspian one last time. As the two of them left the archive, Elias looked at the old school files one last time. In Caspian's photo, the boy's eyes seemed to be looking at him. And under the photo, there was a small inscription he hadn't noticed before. Brevi tempor amis. Soon, my friend. This writing also looked fresh, as if it had just been written. As Elias and Henrik drove to the Karuna cemetery, Elias's mind was racing. The possibility that his father was truly immortal could change everything. Magnus Thornfield's grave was in the oldest section of the city, in a quiet corner among the pine trees. Here it is, said Henrik, pointing to a granite headstone. Magnus Thornfield, 1952 to 2023. Beloved husband and father. The grave looked new. The flowers on it had not yet withered. Henrik, we have to dig up this grave. What? Are you insane? Grave robbing is a crime. But we have to know if my father is really in there. Henrik hesitated. All right, but we have to be careful. We'll come back at night and do it. Just then, a voice came from behind the grave. That won't be necessary. They both turned. A tall, dark-haired man in his 60s was standing there. Elias had never seen him before, but there was something familiar about his face. Who are you? Asked Henrik. I am Torsten Lindquist, an old friend of Magnus, and the person you are looking for. Elias looked at the man more closely. There was a depth in his eyes similar to Magnus's. You know my father? Of course I do, because I am a Dackelfur, just like him. Henrik asked in astonishment. You're a dark elf too? Yes, and Magnus is not here right now. He is trying to stop Caspian. Elias's heart quickened. My father is alive? Of course he is. We do not die. We just sometimes disappear. Torsten approached them. Come, I will tell you everything, but not here. Torsten led them to a small cabin deep in the forest. When they went inside, they saw ancient Norse runes and crystal stones on the walls. We are safe here, said Torsten. Caspian cannot find this place. Why not? Asked Elias. Because this is sacred ground. It has been protected by our ancestors for thousands of years. Torsten offered them tea and began to explain. The war between the Lusalfar and the Daykelfar is very old. They are light, we are dark. They take, we protect. What is the cause of this war? Asked Henrik. Balance. The human world is very fragile. If too many children cross over to the Lusalfar, this world will collapse spiritually. Elias was trying to understand. So how did my father become my protector? It was no coincidence. Magnus chose you before you were born. Because you are special. How am I special? Torsten stood up and took one of the crystal stones from the wall. Touch this. When Elias touched the stone, something extraordinary happened. Not only did it glow, but small particles of light began to dance in the air. What is this? You carry both human and elven blood. This is very rare, Henrik said in amazement. What do you mean? Elias's great-great-grandmother was a Lusalfar. It is a very weak bloodline, but it exists. What does that mean? It means you can cross over to both Caspian's world and ours. You are a bridge. Elias was confused. I'm a bridge? Yes, and that is why Caspian is so fond of you. Just as you can cross into his world, you can also bring him into this world. Henrik asked, with concern, is that dangerous? Very dangerous. If Elias makes the wrong choice, the balance between the two worlds could be disrupted. Torsten opened an old map on the table. It showed Karuna and its surroundings, but with much more detail. Look, there are elf gates here. Passages between the two worlds. There were bright spots on the map. One of them was directly over the Aldridge's summer house. The summer house is a gate? Yes, and a very powerful one. Caspian can exist in your world through it. And the other gates? Torsten pointed to different spots. This is Lake Tornatresk. And this is Mount Kebnekaise. They are all powerful points. Can we close these gates? No, but we can control them. Magnus is currently trying to close the gate at the summer house. Henrik's phone rang. It was Astrid. Henrik, very strange things are happening. What is it? Caspian has disappeared, but there are lights around Elia's house. What kind of lights? Blue and green lights. And very strange sounds are coming from there. The line went dead. Torsten stood up. Magnus has succeeded. He is closing the gate. Is that a good thing? Yes and no. It's good because Caspian is not as strong anymore. It's bad because now he will become desperate. What does a desperate Caspian do? He will try anything. He might try to take you by force. Elias stood up. Then I must go and speak to him one last time. No. It's too dangerous. But I have to finish it. It can't go on like this. Torsten thought for a long time. All right, but you will not go alone. I will come with you. And so will I, said Henrik as they approached Elias's house. They could indeed see strange lights. Spirals of blue and green light were circling the house. He is here, said Torsten, but he is very weak. His power has diminished because the gate is closed. When they entered the garden, they saw Caspian, but he looked very different. Sometimes he was a child, sometimes a young man, sometimes an old one. He was constantly changing. Elias, Caspian said when he saw him, "You've come, I have waited so long." Caspian, we need to talk. Of course, my friend, but first, send these men away. They do not belong with us. Torsten stepped forward. I am Torsten Lindquist, a friend of Magnus. Caspian's eyes flashed with anger. A Daykelfar, you have always stood in our way. Because you disrupt the balance. We harm no one. We only want friendship, Elias intervened. Caspian, what happened? To the other children? Caspian's expression changed. What children? Lars, Ingrid, Johan, dozens of them. They are happy with us. Where are they? Caspian fell silent. Then he spoke in a sad voice. In our world. But they are no longer children. What do you mean? Time works differently in our world. They grew up. And when they grew up, they began to forget me. Torsten interjected. That is the truth. You take the children, but they leave you when they grow up. Tears began to well up in Caspian's eyes. I just wanted to be friends forever. Elias approached him. Caspian, that is not the way to be friends forever. There is no other way. I do not age, they do. I remain a child, they become adults. Then perhaps you need to accept being alone. Caspian's face twisted with rage. No. If you will not come with me, I will take you by force. At that moment, the lights around them became very bright. Caspian was growing stronger again. Torsten shouted, This is impossible. The gate is closed. But Henrik noticed something different. Look, the crystal stone in Elias's pocket. Elias looked at his pocket. The crystal stone he had received from Inga was glowing brightly, and it was giving Caspian strength. Throw this stone away, shouted Torsten, but Elias didn't throw it. Instead, he held the stone in his hand and looked at Caspian. Caspian, what will happen if I break this stone? No, don't break it. It's my last connection to this world. Then I have one final offer. I will keep this stone. But you will not. Try to take any more children. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. You have lived for thousands of years. I for only 42. But I am choosing to be your friend. Caspian looked on in astonishment. Will you come with me? No, but I will not abandon you completely either. As long as I have this stone, you can talk to me. But we won't be able to meet physically. No, but friendship doesn't have to be physical. Caspian thought for a long time. Then he began to cry. I'm so lonely, Elias, so very lonely. I am lonely too, but loneliness can be shared. At that moment, a voice came from deep within the forest. Elias, everyone turned. Magnus Thornfield was standing there. He was tired but alive. Father. Magnus ran and embraced Elias. My son, I was so worried. You weren't dead. No, I was just on a mission. I was trying to close the gate. Magnus turned to Caspian. That's enough now. Leave this boy alone. Caspian was afraid when he saw Magnus. Magnus, you are very powerful. Yes. And you are very tired. It is time for you to rest. I cannot rest. I am immortal. Being immortal does not mean you cannot rest. Magnus took another crystal stone from his pocket. This one was blue and emitted a very calm light. This is a sleep stone. It can make you sleep for 100 years. Caspian drew back. No, I don't want to sleep. You are very tired. It would be good for you to sleep. Elias intervened. Wait, Caspian, if you sleep I won't be here when you wake up in 100 years. Yes, Caspian said sadly. Then let me give you one last gift. Elias took the crystal stone from his pocket, but instead of breaking it, he blew on it and whispered. A small wish. The stone suddenly became very bright and flew towards Caspian's hand. What is this? This is my friendship. As long as the stone is with you, you will remember me. And I will remember you. Caspian held the stone in his hand. A peaceful expression appeared on his face. Thank you, Elias. You are a true friend. You too. Magnus held the sleepstone towards Caspian. Are you ready now? Caspian nodded. Yes. But Elias, in 100 years, if I somehow return, will you remember me? Always. Caspian touched the sleepstone. His eyes closed instantly, and he slowly began to fade. Goodbye, my friend, he whispered, and he was gone. Only 2 crystal stones remained, one in Elias's hand the other on the ground. Magnus picked up the stone from the ground. I will put this in a safe place. In 100 years, perhaps another child might need it. Elias looked at his father. Father, are you really immortal? Yes, my son. But it is not always a beautiful thing. Why? Because you lose the ones you love, but you carry both human and elven blood. Perhaps you can unite the two worlds. Torsten approached. Magnus, did you close the gate completely? No, I only brought it under control. Because it might be needed in the future. Henrik interjected. And what about the other children? The ones Caspian took? Magnus shook his head with a sad expression. They are no longer here, but I hope that they are happy too. Everyone stood in silence. The end of a long struggle had come. Elias looked at the crystal stone in his hand. It was now emitting a very faint light, but it was still warm. And sometimes, on very quiet nights, he could hear a very faint voice coming from the stone. My friend, thank you. Perhaps friendship truly was immortal. It just lived on in different forms. As Elias returned home, he knew he was no longer alone. He had both a living father and a sleeping friend, and perhaps that was what everyone needed. Not a perfect ending, but a real connection. But the story was not over yet. Because the next morning when Elias woke up, he found a small note under his pillow. My dear friend, sleep is very sweet. But in my dreams, we are playing together. 100 years is not so long. I will be patient. CA. The note was written in fresh ink, and Elias understood that the true beginning of their story had perhaps not yet arrived.